Alrighty, I'm going to show you this ad. I know exactly what this ad is. I can knock every one of these bloody points out of the park. Having grown up in a town with an Aboriginal name on a farm with an Aboriginal name. I tell you what, these city people, it's just the bloody lies spun versus what it's actually like to be in these places is light years different. So let's play this load of crap.
Will I grow up in a country that hears my voice?
It already does. You already have parliamentarians representing you. There's so many damn departments. There's so much voice and say they get. It's absolutely bloody incredible already.
Will I live as long as other Australians?
No, you won't, and you currently don't, because most of you die early, 8 years early, they're saying. I actually believe it's earlier than that. And it's all based on alcohol abuse. And the strange thing is, this was recognised by elders about 40 years ago, tribal elders, who, lead the tribe. And there's areas, and I'll show screenshots at some point, where they have signs up that alcohol is prohibited past this point. And there's restrictions where you're restricted to bring in, I think it might be 6 beers, you got to pour out all the wine, you got to do all these things. Because public roads actually go through Aboriginal land. It's like the public road goes through like a reservation, so to speak, in American terms. They have these areas where alcohol's banned and has been for 40 years. And you think, oh, well, it's only one. Yeah, well, this is another point that comes up. Aboriginal land is actually more than half the land of the entire country. We should give the land back. Well, they already got half. Yeah. They implemented a system up north where most of them live, where Northern Western Australia and I believe Northern Territory, where they had a limit on buying 2 beers a day. Funny. All the family violence cleared up and all this stuff. And just like it worked in all these areas where they've banned alcohol, it makes a huge difference to the violence because there's a lot of violence. If you really want to understand how bad it is, I suggest you look up an event that was known as the Intervention, where we had our own army on the ground inside our own country for 12 years, I believe it was, to stop, rapes of 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds, and just general violence against women and anyone who was, not as well able to look after themselves as a full-grown man. This system they had, where they only had 2 beers a day, it was a brilliant system, and it started to clear up all the family violence and all the suicides and all the other bullshit that went on. And this dickhead who's brought up all this referendum decided that he had a chat to a few of them, and then they decided it's an Aboriginal man's right to have alcohol, so they took all the restrictions off again. The funny thing is, Aboriginal men are well higher above than the average Joe in this country. They're a privileged group. Aboriginal women, however, are about fourth class citizens. The Aboriginal women did not want this ban to come off. They knew exactly what had happened before, and they knew exactly what will happen if it comes off. It come off anyway because Aboriginal rights to fill the place up with alcohol and let the chaos begin yet again, of which Aboriginal women are generally the brunt of it. If I murder someone, I get 4 years. If I murder my wife, I get minimum 12, usually 14 to 16 years. There's a guy who was a hotshot lawyer who believed he had saved Aboriginals and this and that because an Aboriginal, he was the greatest thing. He'd done the best thing for Aboriginals, for the justice of Aboriginals. A guy beat his girlfriend of 10 years to death, I think it was 15 years actually, to death with a beer bottle. He was going to get 6 months jail. This lawyer managed to get him 0 jail. That's his long-term partner he beat to death with a beer bottle. And he walked scot-free. That's what they want to pretend is Aboriginal rights. It's not rights. The women are just fucking trampled on. They also started another system using the welfare system where they made it so they would only get 1/3 of their money, so they'd spend less on alcohol, and the rest you can buy stuff in shops. The women loved it because all of a sudden they had heaps of money for food, and all the kids got clothes, and all the kids were fed, and everybody had plenty of food because alcohol and cigarettes only were 1/3 of the welfare check, not the whole bloody lot. And what did Aboriginal men do? Well, one come out on TV and said it's racist. And I said, yeah, it is racist. They should bring this to all the fucking useless white trash like the dickheads that I went to school with. And guess what they done? They done exactly that. Oh, yeah. That's my kind of racial justice. These people who are drug addicts, these people who can't handle money, who are long-term white welfare recipients, got jammed on this damn program. And some people who believe that they were no good at handling money volunteered themselves to go on it. And it has worked brilliantly. You got to understand, over here in Australia, welfare is just cash. No food stamps or that bullshit, it's just money. And alcohol is the devil to these people. It really is. And I mean, you can stem every bloody health problem, every societal problem, every fucking real big issue these people have. The vast majority of it stems directly from alcohol. They are missing an enzyme in their intestines, in their digestive system, that white people have after hundreds and hundreds of years of eating bread with yeast in it, drinking alcohol, having fermented cheese, fermented meats. But they don't have this enzyme. And so they get more drunk off less alcohol. And it doesn't really help that rubbing alcohol here isn't isopropyl alcohol. It's actual, it's 95 to 98% actual drinkable ethanol. And then they just add in a bit of methanol and say, well, it's fine. We put 5% or 2% methanol in. And you know what they do? They go and get the cordial. The cheap stuff. They pour half on the ground and they top it up with methylated spirits and they start drinking it. Oh, holy hell, do they get drunk. You know, they want respect and whatnot, but you can go and find a few slideshows of this on YouTube and you can go and see it in person up north. They'll be passed out drunk for 7 hours straight in the park. Just absolutely freaking comatose. And everybody says, well, you can't say that. Oh, they're just like us. Oh, really? You mean the ones that claim to be, but are like 5% Aboriginal, 95% white? You got to go up to these areas to see how. You don't sit there judging, well, you know, I know an Aboriginal, what, who lives in the city, drives a Prius, owns an iPhone. That's not a fucking Aboriginal. That's a fake. That's like me with my 6% fucking Viking. Does that mean I got to run around with a fucking helmet with horns on it and a long beard and, you know, all this shit? Oh, fuck off. I'm only 6%, you know. It's generations back. Well, same with a lot of these ones in the city. You know, I call them fucking washouts because all the black's washed out of them. But, you know, this is coming from someone who grew up in an area where there are actual real Aboriginals. In fact, I will show a speech in front of the United Nations by someone that I knew personally as a child. It was a friend of my parents. They went to the United Nations in Geneva to speak on the plight of Aboriginal people. They were real Aboriginal. They were actually part of the stolen generation, and there's a whole massive story behind what the stolen generation is. It's so fucked. And every one of these things, they had 450,000 people considering themselves Aboriginal in the census or by the Welfare Office about 8 years ago, and they spent $6 billion a year excluding their actual welfare money. This is just on the programs for them. Now they believe it's about 1.5 million, but the birth rate suggests that it shouldn't be even close to 1 million, and yet somehow there's 1.5 million. You don't need a DNA test. You just bloody proclaim you're one. And now it's gone up to $40 billion a year. But let's continue on for us to listen to this guy asks if he's going to get all the stuff that they've already got literally billions for a handful of people.
Will I get to go to a good school?
Yeah, they've already got dedicated Aboriginal schools here. There's one up in the northeast of Melbourne, just outside, and it's almost like it's an Aboriginal girls' school. And one of the things with education is most of them don't bloody want it. And so this is more white person bullshit overlaying white values that, well, what Aboriginals want is what white man wants. Yeah, I'm sure they want a mortgage and a Mercedes Benz and have to work 50 hours a week. Yeah, fucking bullshit. You don't know any Aboriginals if you actually think that's what they want. And if that's what they want, I can guarantee you they are, once again, 5 or 10% Aboriginal. It's bullshit. They don't have motivation. They don't have materialism and all this shit in the same way. All the stuff they're striving for is all different. But yeah, they do have schools and massive amount of funding and like whole diversity quota programs that allow them to get first place in front of everybody else. Will you get to go to a good school? Yeah, you will. Especially if you're willing to get on a plane and fly out of one of these communities. A lot of girls end up getting an actual education as nurses and stuff, and they go back to where they were and they treat the same people that they grew up with. But they end up being not just a nurse, they end up doing births, they end up doing absolutely everything to the point that it's just about out of their training range. But hey, they're going friggin' try. And I applaud them because they're going back to help their own people. And this is the funding, this is the training we should fund. We should actually give them as much training as they bloody need, I honestly think.
Will I be able to learn my people's language?
Once again, they already know their people's language. I've seen people in their 20s fully speaking the language without a word of English. In fact, what's real hilarious is they've got a few islands that Aboriginals live off the north coast, like going towards Indonesia. And the trouble is they keep trying to get weed out there. Like they buy it on the mainland and try and get it back out. So the cops are always there with the dogs trying to sniff it all out to try and knock out the amount of weed that's getting out there, which I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's probably a good idea, actually. The trouble is when they know they're going to get busted, they start talking to each other in their own language. And I've literally seen one of these customs officials, a woman sitting there saying, no language, no language, no language. These bloody customs officials aren't trained worth a shit in their language to know what they're talking about. Imagine if you were a border patrol official in the United States and you couldn't speak fucking Spanish. I mean, that's how fucking dumb it is as far as I'm concerned. It's just pathetic. But they all do speak all their own language out there. If they grow up in the community, I fucking absolutely guarantee shit from shine all they speak their language already. Back in the day, back in the 60s and that, we used to stop them speaking their language inside school. They could speak it outside, but not inside school. At least that was some of the rules in Western Australia. I'm not saying all the states, but I wouldn't be surprised if other states were sort of a bit the same way because, when you're trying to make someone white, you don't want them sort of speaking their own language, but This is a part of the problem. We've spent so many years trying to make them white, and you just got to accept that no matter how much of a city fucking dipshit you are, like that phrase Will Smith uses on iRobot, you're one of the dumbest smart people I know. And that's what a lot of these people really are. They're the same dickheads that think black people want to be white. No, they don't. They bloody don't. And the faster you realise that, the better off you'll be.
Will I be seen beyond the sports field?
If you do something that's worth seeing beyond the sports field. A lot of them, these football clubs, they scout people out there, out in the outback, because they know some of these kids are absolutely brilliant at football because, I mean, they run like the friggin' wind, and they're really good at football. Will you be seen outside of a football field if you do something that is notable, worth seeing? I kind of used to work with someone, I still got his number in my phone actually, who his grandfather was a famous sports person, but he was also brilliant at playing snooker and all these other friggin' skills the guy had of playing all these different games and different stuff. But like so many of them, he had trouble with alcohol. And yeah, but this guy, he never refers to himself as Aboriginal, and it will take you months before he even tells you. And one day I was working at the warehouse, which I used to call the shit show, because it was, and the previous supervisor used to call it the storehouse because he said it's not a warehouse because in a warehouse you know where everything is. And I was walking around looking for some bloody model of fridge, some big number, and I said to this guy, he goes, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, wandering the aisles like an Aboriginal lost in the desert looking for this stupid effing fridge." And he sort of went a little bit quiet, and then later I realised he's part Aboriginal. But he doesn't refer to himself as Aboriginal. And he used to talk about this other guy who was Indian at a former job he had, at a previous job he had, who used to have this big thing, brown pride, on his car. He said, "That's bloody racist. I can't say white pride. But this guy's allowed to have all that shit." "Oh, well, we'll just let him do that." And I was sitting there thinking, what do you want to say white pride for? You should fucking point out the fact you're part Aboriginal. But he rarely does to anybody. And you won't really notice it, but you can tell it with his eyes because, when he tells you, then you sort of pick up on a few of the signs. And one of the signs is they have very deep set eyes. And he had the brown eyes, and they're usually fairly small brown eyes, and he had that, but they were slightly deep set, and that's one of the dead giveaways. And you sort of think about it, like if you got hit in the face with a stick and you got an infected eye, you'd probably end up dying. And over thousands of years, anybody whose eyes weren't deep set probably just got wiped out of the gene pool from infections of the eye, and hence they've all got very deep set eyes generally. Of course, once you're 95% white, that doesn't necessarily happen, but he still had sort of deep set eyes. But this is one of the things. His grandfather, was seen on the sports field, but he's brilliant at other things. So he was seen and was known outside of just football because he achieved other things. And there's some that are great artists, and stuff like that. There's some that are great boxers and things like that. But generally, sports is one of the things they're good at, because they're just, they don't have all the motivation to achieve other grandiose white man things because they were never motivated to in the first place.
Recognised by the decision makers of our country.
You already are recognised by the decision makers of our country. You're put so far ahead of everybody else, it's not funny.
Yes makes it possible.
A yes vote is just trying to continue with the same stuff we've already put money into. But you see, this is starting to look a little bit like Ukraine, where they're spending so much money. They're spending and they're sending so much money that you wonder if some of it isn't funneling back into their own pockets. And a lot of this, you go out there and they're still living like shit. $40 billion and they're still living like shit. A lot of the stuff they're given, they will wreck it. And then they will ask for it again. There are extended family members who have seen a car bought for them with government money that happened to be a big hotted up GM ute. And they'd done burnouts in the thing for hours and they destroyed the thing. They broke a shaft in the transmission or broke the crankshaft or something. They killed it in a day. The trouble is they've been given so much they don't appreciate a lot of this stuff half the time. And so much money is thrown into this. And it's always increasing. But you realise that so much of this is spent on white scammers or white people who have got one slither of Aboriginal, like I have got a slither of Swedish Norwegian. And really speaking, a lot of it is sunk by building contractors. And whatever a house costs, just you know, they build houses for them. Okay, rightio. One of the first things they'll do is get out the chainsaw and cut out all the wooden floors because it's good firewood going to waste. I'm fucking serious. You got to see it to believe it. And they have little tracks that go through to everybody's bed and to other parts. But any rooms where they don't, it's just the friggin', you know, breezes coming up through the hole in the floor. It's unbelievable. It's the trouble is a lot of this housing that is built, the price is you know all by tender and everybody's shaking their each other's hands and they're all mates and you know the price that it should cost and would cost is more than tenfold. They had some journalists go up there, I don't know if it was a TV show or newspaper or something. They're up in the north and they asked all these local tradespeople how much to build this. And they said 70,000. Some said 80,000. And you know the actual quote? Well, it was somebody who was in cahoots with the politicians and it was built for 1.2 million. Yeah. These people have just become a scapegoat for, it's a bit like the homeless in America. You've got people who are politically connected who get these contracts who put 80%, 90% or more of the money in their pocket. And the remaining, 5% goes to Aboriginals to build them a house or give them a car, which they then do burnouts in and wreck it, or they smash the house up. In 5 years, the house is fucked. A bit of drunkenness helps these sort of things along, doesn't it? Especially if you take all the alcohol bans off. You get what I'm saying? It's an Aboriginal industrial complex where there's just a whole bunch of these fucking, what's the name for it? Used to hear Ron Paul say it. It's a certain sort of, it's a kind of capitalism. Hang on, cat's attacking me here. Crony capitalism. That's what it is. It's crony capitalism. It's the same sort of shit that the leftists used to worry about with Halliburton, where they got, the fucking, all the mates and all the contracts, and they just put in whatever fucking price they want and they get it through. It's done. Because they got all the connections. And the same thing's happening. And, like, the pawn in all this is Aboriginal kids, men, women, whatever. They're just the pawn in all this government money pouring into some subcontractor's pocket to build this house. Materials and all that, tradesmen cost them 5 or 10% of what they took. And so the other 95% goes in their pocket and they go out and they buy themselves a friggin' Ferrari. And then we let all the alcohol come back in and only give it 5 years and the house will be smashed up or someone will burn it down or some shit. And then they'll need another one. In fact, friends of my parents have seen people go into places to agitate local tribes to talk them into pushing that they need new housing or they need more housing or they should get this kind of a building or that kind. These agitators are paid by the building contractors who have the political connections. It's such a fucking shit show of a system. And so a yes vote makes sure that these people are never found out for their corruption, and this corruption stays permanently entrenched as using these people as a pawn for their own financial gain of taking 95% of the taxpayer money on this tender that's too ridiculous to be true and pocketing 95% and then sending people out to build houses and hoping that they get drunk enough to destroy them fast enough so they can build more. And if not, we can send the agitator into another reservation and get them knowing people and, we'd start the lobbying process for these people to get some other building built that I can build and pocket 95% of that as well. It's a fucking disgrace.